Stay in the know with Radio 2000 podcast.
All right, so let's discuss these serious issues. We started this conversation yesterday. So for Legal Tuesday today, we've decided to talk about how banks have long been accused of systematic discrimination, especially, against black people, right? It's alleged that some banks have been charging black bondholders significantly higher interest rates on bonds and motor vehicle loans compared to their white counterparts, mounting up to more than 40% in some cases. So we've got Emerald van Zyl on the line. Emerald van Zyl is a seasoned private financial consultant and investigator. Good morning, Emerald. How are you doing this morning?
No, I'm fine, and good morning to all the listeners.
It's so great to have you on the show today to just try to help us understand this issue. So this has been an ongoing issue for many years. I mean, you've been in the industry for over 30 years, and this is nothing new. This is not a new conversation for you. Explain to us how this happens and how institutions like the Financial Sector Conduct Authority and the National Credit Regulator have been allowing this to happen.
Well, I have discovered that FNB discriminate against low-cost housing by charging them higher interest rates. By doing that, when the interest rate is in the declining phase of the prime rate, they don't adjust on the low-cost housing, which increases the person's rate with almost 3.75%. That means that client on his home loan was paying about 30 to 40% more monthly. This matter went to the Pretoria High Court. I was the plaintiff on behalf of 3,000 low-cost housing clients. And what happened here is that I was poisoned. I ended up in intensive care. I could not support my legal people, and that allowed them to lie under oath that their interest rates was not linked to prime. And the fact is that I've lost the case, and it now transpires after documentation leaked to me from one of their people in their legal team that that provided me with documentation that says in an annual financial report, the CEO said that their interest rate was historically linked to prime.
This is so disheartening. So maybe tell us what about the 1990 USury Act Amendment Bill.
The 1990 USury Act Amendment Bill was promulgated, and it was at that stage. It's a long story to what led to this, but what happened is that banks made available 3.5 billion to Urban Foundation for low-cost housing. What happened then is the banks wanted to charge a higher interest rate because of the so-called risk factor. And this was not acceptable for the government. And it was agreed that the fee of R5, VAT excluded, can be levied monthly on money lending transactions. That fee was then introduced, and the bank levied that fee and still discriminated against black people. What I discovered now recently with Wesbank, who is part of First National Bank, that they are charging black people up to 19% compared to 11% for white people. And I've got all the evidence I've got.
We're having a conversation with Emerald van Zyl. He's a private financial consultant and investigator, talking to us about how South African banks have long been accused of systematic discrimination and basically racism, and how they charge black people on bonds and motor vehicles in terms of interest rates. So, Emerald, you were telling us what the USury Act stipulates, and you were telling us also about how the banks have gone against that amendment. So, what should should ideally be influencing our interest rates, the factors?
Well, the fact of the matter is that whenever they confront it with the fact that they're charging black people a higher interest rate, they always come with a thing of high risk. The word risk always comes up. Now, let me explain to you that most of black people are government employees. They get a subsidiary from the government. Their salary their installments goes directly off their salary. Now, where is the so-called risk? To my mind, it is less. They are less risk factor than white people. But it's not because of risk. It's all related to profitability. That is what it's all about, is profits. And black people must suffer for the banks to make big profits for their directors and things like that, earning 80 million rand a year, 20 million rand a year, while the black people on ground level can't make a living. How can a person that's paying 40% more on his home loan and he pays 25% more on his motor vehicle, how can such a person survive?
All right, so Mr. Van Zyl, if I then am alerted to the fact that I've been charged high interest rates as a black person based on the color of my skin, right? Yeah. Whether it be on my home loan or with my car, loan, am I able to take the racist bank to the courts to ask for them to reimburse my money?
Well, anybody these days that takes such a matter to court is going to waste their times because, to my mind, our judiciary system is corrupt. Absolutely corrupt. You're sitting here in Cape Town with the Judge President John Slopey that about 20 years ago tried to influence a case. And he was suspended about 2 years ago. Now, the fact of the matter is, if you take anything like this to court, what will happen is the bank will financially ruin you. You take it to the ombudsman is more corrupt, and the National Credit Regulator is useless.
All right, so what about associations like the Banking Association of South Africa? You've got the Reserve Bank, you've got the Financial Sector Regulation Act. Does nobody assist?
They won't touch banks at the present moment because the banks, the government are the banks. Now, what is now transpiring, and I'm saying that, but want to put it on record that I've got nothing to do with this. A black stop payment action is looming on FNB and Wesbank. I had numerous meetings with community leaders, and this is what's going to happen. That was discussed last year, and that is the only way out to solve this problem, because the government don't want to help. So a massive non-payment action by black people on Wesbank and on FNB is looming, and I'll just put it on record again that I've got nothing to do with it.
All right. I hear you saying that the government wants nothing to do with this issue, but there's also been calls, I don't know if you've heard, for a judicial commission of inquiry with the financial forensic capacity to look into this alleged discrimination. Do you think this will assist?
Well, that is new to me, but why don't they contact me? Because I'm sitting with all the information that proves discrimination.
All right, Mr. Van Zyl. So what do you say is looming?
Well, a massive black payment action by black people on Wesbank and First National Bank.
All right. Mr. Van Zyl, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Mr. Emerald van Zyl. He's a private financial consultant and investigator.
Missed it? Catch the rewind on radio2000.co.za.